I have a treat for you today. We are talking to Kimberly Lopez. She is one of my clients, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to you because she does such a beautiful job in our interview. What she shares with us in this episode is an accumulation of what she's learned in her 15 years in big law and in the time that we have worked together. And if this episode resonates with you, I highly recommend connecting with Kimberly after listening. You can find the links that she mentions to connect with her on LinkedIn and Instagram in the show notes at dinacataldo.com/242. All right, we're going to just jump right on in so we can get all the wisdom that Kimberly shares. Kimberly, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Thanks, Dina, for having me. I'm looking forward to it too.
Ah, Can you just introduce yourself to the listeners? Let them know like what practice area you're in and where you live, all that good stuff.
Sure. So my name is Kimberly Lopez, and I am a commercial litigation attorney based in Orlando, Florida. And I've been at an AmLaw 100 firm for my entire career, the same firm. So part of that unicorn group, we can say they're homegrown and have been in the same place. But I'm entering my 15th year of practice, and the entire time I've been in commercial litigation, having worked my way through the ranks from starting as a summer associate all the way now to partner.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, staying with the same firm. And what were some of the things as you were coming up in your experience that you have found to be challenging for you?
Sure. So right from the beginning, I started in the Great Recession. So there was a lot of challenges right off the bat, from a lot of worries if today was going to be the day. You would put on the news, read the legal journals, and it's constant talks about layoffs and just reductions. So there was a lot of challenges then, and just making sure that I stood my path and was able to succeed in that. And from that, it's funny how a challenge becomes a success because that actually influenced my practice area for some time. And still to this day, everyone touched foreclosures in one way, shape, or form. But it really became a specialty of mine because I was just around a good group of people who took the time to train me in that because it was a busy area. And so I'm one of the ones who kind of stuck in there. So that's one of my practice areas because of that. Those were challenges. Finding my own way too, and finding a voice in the type of attorney that I wanted to be. Being a first generation professional, the first one in my family to go beyond an associate's degree. There were a lot of challenges in not knowing how to have your own voice. Sometimes you try to mimic others, and that's not good or comfortable. So, kind of finding my own way. Yes, I learned from people here and there, but I had to kind of put that together to make my own path and have my own voice in my career.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot from attorneys, especially first generation attorneys, really
Mhm.
who didn't have that guidance and didn't always feel comfortable reaching out to other people for that guidance. It just didn't seem like there was a direction for them to go to get the help that they wanted. Um, I'm curious, like, how has your experience as a lawyer informed what you're passionate about today?
Again, through that process of kind of finding different areas that worked for me or ways that I could help, I've become really enthusiastic about helping minorities, business owners. I serve on a nonprofit board, just that's kind of serves as a economic development arm here in our local community, focus particularly on Hispanic entrepreneurs and a lot of partnerships with other areas. But that's become a passion of mine because I see that there's so much talent out there, right, in the business community and in our economy. But sometimes people just don't have the resources or the know-how, not having someone to talk to or having those same issues that I had, not knowing the ropes, so to speak. So I like to take what I've learned in representing Fortune 500 companies and try to bring that to the community and small minority-owned businesses as well so that they can flourish in our economy.
Yeah. And I think this is really important for anyone who's listening right now to know that you may not know exactly what you are passionate about right now. It
Mhm.
takes trial and error. It takes trying things that are new and seeing if there's something that really fits with your interests. It sounds like you found something that really clicked with not only how you identify yourself, but how you can take what you've learned and help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not to say that I'm able to do that 100% of my time, but, it lets me keep my eyes open for opportunities. It's given me a platform to be able to speak to and reach out to the community. And it's influenced my community service work and the non-billable stuff and pro bono work as well. So that's been helpful to find that area that really motivates me.
Yeah. I mean, you are a very together attorney. I think most attorneys think in some way like there are aspects of my life that I am very together in. And then there's aspects of my life that I want to change or I want to improve or I don't feel as together in. And that came to mind just because the way you're speaking about what interests you, it's very clear that not only are you passionate, but you're a really hard worker. And so you're going to figure things out. I'm curious what drew you to coaching and had you book a strategy session with me?
Mhm. Well, thank you for the compliment because that's certainly not how I always feel. And that's probably how I got to coaching is feeling that, I have some shortfall or, you fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others. Like, why can this person do it and I can't? There must be something wrong or something I'm not seeing. And the first time I was exposed to kind of the mindset and coaching, I was back in 2019. And just to know that that was even a possibility was kind of mind boggling, to be honest. I was like, wait a second, this kind of makes sense, right? Because so much of it is pressure that I'm putting on myself because I'm not telling myself the right things. So when I heard your podcast, and I'm an avid podcast listener and I would listen to podcasts, but I finally hit the realization that as much as I listened to podcasts, it just wasn't enough. And sometimes you just need that extra help. So I booked a strategy call and we had a great discussion. And I went from there because it helped me realize that it's not any shortfall of my, talent or skill set, but really I had a lot to address in the mindset bucket.
And it's so funny because, like, as I was prepping for this call, I was thinking about what we talked about during that strategy session. And I remember, um, I think it might have been like the first day we actually had the session. And
Mhm.
you said something to me to the effect of, it's like, I almost didn't do it. Like, I
Mhm.
almost thought, like, I almost felt guilty about spending money on me. Can you tell us kind of what was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it is an investment. And at first you think, like, wait a second, it's just mindset. I mean, how hard can this be? Why can't I figure this out myself? Like, why do I need somebody else to tell me about this, right? It's my mind, it's my life. I know all the details. But so there was that hesitation in the beginning, but certainly as you go through it, it's just you realize how no matter how many podcasts you listen to, having someone be able to question your thoughts and kind of pose questions to you is really where you get the most out of it. We think we could do it ourselves, but our blind spots are our blind spots, and without that extra voice, objective view, it really it's there's no comparison.
It's so interesting because, and this is something that I see repeated with lawyers, right? All of us have this, is we think that other people and the way we spend our money is a reflection of this, right? It's like other people are more important, right? And
Mhm.
and we can look and be like, yes, our child, of course, our
Mhm.
child's welfare, we're going to put that welfare first, right? But then a lot of times we take our the money that we're spending and we think about the other people and we think, well, maybe I should be spending it for something that they need versus like looking at what is it that I really need and how can I support myself in a way that long term is going to further all of my goals, including goals for my kids, my family, whatever it is. Like, did that kind of factor in when you were thinking about where you wanted to invest your money?
Oh, absolutely. When you see the investment, you say, wait a second, I could use that for, XYZ or summer camps for my kid, or there's a hundred different things that we can come up with, right? Where at that time we may think the money should be spent or might be better spent. But it was just reaching a point where I felt like this was needed in order to address where I felt I needed help in terms of my business development, my, career advancement. So, in the end, it's an investment really to help you on all those other things, right? But it's just kind of making that realization that this is something that you need and it's not, you know, floundering money or kind of throwing things away. It's really what you need, and that's okay to spend it on that.
Yeah. Um, a lot of times I'll get questions from people who are like, what exactly is coaching? And I can explain it, a dozen different ways, but I'd like to hear how you would explain it.
I think it's kind of working through it's problem solving, but through a different lens than you've probably ever done before. So it's kind of working through what your challenges are, what is stopping you from achieving what you may want, and then looking at it from a different perspective and addressing the mindset piece. I mean, for me, the coaching has really been about mindset and giving myself the script or the formula to address issues as they arise, recognizing that many times, if not all the time, it's really a mindset issue that's stopping me or blocking me from doing what it is that I know I need to do or what that things that I want to do.
Yeah. Where has that shown up vividly for you?
Vividly in my work, I think as lawyers, especially women lawyers, we like to brag about multitasking. And if we're busy, then we're being productive. But for me, in addressing certain mindset issues of like, why is it that I haven't gotten this one project done? And before I would justify, but look at all these other things I've done. But in talking with you and working through things, I now know how to stop myself and say, wait a second. Why is it that we don't want to touch this file or draft this motion? And many times it's just kind of a thought that's stopping me or makes it uncomfortable for me to just jump in and get it done. So that's really where it's shown up the most for me, where I could now physically feel when I have that thought and stop, pause, address it, give myself a script to make sure that I don't allow that to continue.
I like the way you phrase that is physically feel that thought. Because,
Mhm.
if anyone here, if you've been listening here for a while, a thought creates a feeling, but oftentimes we don't have any access to the thought. We have no idea what's going on in our brain. We're so attached to what we believe to be true. We can't see, kind of like see the
Mhm.
forest for the trees kind of thing.
Yep.
So describe for me your experience in terms of what it means to feel a thought, because a lot of times people come to me and they're like, I don't have access to feelings. That was me too, right? I didn't
Yeah.
have access to my feelings, but when I did access them, learn how to do that, it changed things for me. Can you explain what you mean by feeling a thought and how it helped you make changes?
Yeah, when you become aware of it and after sessions with you and you talk about these questions or things to ask yourself, I started becoming aware of the fact, like in terms of tension or things that I didn't want to do, that I felt like tension in my gut, like literally like a gut reaction of like, oh no, like you just, and sometimes there's even like a verbal pronunciation of it, but that for me is attention. When I'm able to identify something that I'm working through, it's my breathing. It's like it's a release. Like I literally, and I think I mentioned this during one of our calls, I said, oh my God, I literally just felt my shoulders drop and took a deep breath because it just felt ease. Like when I was able to reframe something, I recognized that one, I can do it, two, it's easy. And I now have the tools to go forward. So when I am able to turn it on its head, it's that ease, a nice um, easy breathing and deep breaths rather than the shallow tension of feeling it in my stomach.
Yeah, that's a really great way to explain that. I hear sometimes people like lawyers, they'll talk to me and they'll say, like, I'm afraid that it's going to be a lot of work and I'm
Mm.
not going to have time for it. And you just said, like, you feel ease. I'm
Mhm.
curious, like, your experience of the work we've done together, has it ever felt like really heavy, hard work? Maybe it has been at sometimes, but I'm just really interested in knowing what your experience has been.
No, the experience has been no, not at all. Certainly in the beginning, and I think that comes from so often we sign up for these programs, whether it be a business development mastermind or something else where there's homework. And really, if you're going to get the most out of it, there's definitive steps and tasks and time that you have to dedicate in between sessions or learning sessions. But with the coaching, what I came to realize is one, sometimes like my favorite sessions where I just showed up and said like what's going on in my life and we identified something to kind of work through. But as you go through your day and your weeks, it's really you. you'd be surprised how you start recognizing what's coming up, and then you can put into practice what you talked about in coaching. So it's not a burden, it's not extra time on your plate. It's really just putting into practice, which will help you with your time.
Yeah. And I have people who come to me sometimes and they're like, they want the worksheets. Like they want,
Yeah.
are there worksheets? Like they're coming to a classroom and they want to absorb
Mhm.
all the knowledge. What would you say to them if they're looking for the worksheets and all of the work to change themselves?
I would say, let's be honest with ourselves. We never do the worksheets, right? Like we may do them once. Um, we may do them once and we print out a extra set, especially now we're recording this in January, right? So we all have our pretty new planners and all the setups and tracking devices that we want to use. Um, but I think the coaching is better when you are learning the tools to address it, whether or not you have a worksheet, right? Because these are things that come up uh, hour by hour in our day, right? There's not always going to be a worksheet to address it, or even if there were, you're probably better served in terms of your time and efforts by just knowing how to address it in the moment rather than having to go to a worksheet. But yeah, I would just say, if I'm honest with myself, I love the worksheets. They look pretty, but we never go back to them consistently.
Right? I mean, when we really learn something, like
Mhm.
that's when it's been the biggest impact for me is when I really learn something from a coach and I'm having my brain questioned, my thoughts, my stories questioned,
Mhm.
and I sit with it and it clicks with me in that session. Or I could be watching TV and then it clicks with me. I'm like, wait a minute.
Right.
And
Right.
then it creates a shift for me that is internal. It has nothing to do with me sitting down and filling in a worksheet or, I'll have sometimes great experiences journaling, right? Because I'm like
Mhm.
writing my thoughts down, but the worksheet is really just a tool. And if you can do that work with a coach to help you, you know, click, right? I'm snapping my
Mhm.
fingers if you're hearing little noises and you're not watching the video. It's like you're going to make progress faster just because we're internalizing it and it becomes part of you versus us trying to get an A, like in school
Right.
where we would fill in the blanks kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree that that term internalizing is definitely spot on for me. And, to your point about writing on a worksheet, I think it probably inserts like an extra block because you're like thinking too much of what to write or how this should sound or how this should look. Whereas if it's internalized, again, you're just able to respond and address the issue spot on in I feel in a more honest manner.
Okay. You mentioned planners, and because I love talking about time management, and I know lawyers love hearing about time management, I'm curious if you share with the people who are listening, like, how is it that you manage your calendar? And maybe it's the way you talk about it might be part tactics and part mindset.
Mhm. Yeah, so from a pure tactical standpoint, I of course have my Outlook calendar where all appointments and everything go. But then I've also developed the habit of time blocking, right? So that might not be on my Outlook, but I usually have a handwritten sketch out where, my appointments are built in, but then I see like a 2 to 3 hour block and like, okay, here's a billable block or here's a business development strategy block. And that just helps me kind of dedicate time to things. And I think the mindset comes in there because it's prioritizing and being okay with making something important, right? So often, there's so much billable work that can be done or so much in a case that can be done. But if you're dedicating 100% to that, you're saying no to a lot of other things, right? So, for example, business development, right? We all know that's an ongoing process. So, the mindset pieces come in terms of helping me be okay with making decisions and prioritizing certain things and not having this mindset of one, it always has to be, go, 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 or 100 balls up in the air. Rather, it's okay to block time for one specific task, one specific case, whatever it may be that's needed that week, as I've determined.
When you sit down at your calendar, do you always feel like doing what's on it?
Of course not. Yeah, no, of course
Right?
not.
So,
Yeah.
so how do you work through when you look at your calendar and you don't feel like doing what's on it? How do you work through that?
Um, well, after coaching and what I've learned in working with you is sometimes I just kind of stop and think like, why don't I want to do this? Like, what's really at issue here? Sometimes it could be I'm feeling I don't know how to address the issue. Maybe it's something I've never done before, so there's a little bit of fear in the unknown. So I try to address that, and when I do that, part of my process at least is breaking it down to very simple tasks. Like sometimes I can make a list like and it may literally say, email John Smith about X. And while it may seem elementary to do it that way, it just makes it much more manageable for my mind to wrap myself around it and say, I can get this done in this block. Or if I do these three simple steps, I can cross this off my list and it's off of my calendar. So that really helps in just determining why is it that I'm having this fear? How do I simplify it? And then just running through the simplified list.
Yeah. I mean, that's really a lot of the work I do with lawyers, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
do with myself too. Like this is something I practice because I too look at my calendar and don't want to do things.
Right.
And I'm like, why? And so
Yeah.
that I'm like, okay, why is it that I don't want to do this?
Right.
Right. And not letting your brain stop at, I don't feel like it. I don't want to.
Mhm.
Right. Really starting to recognize, like, oh, there's something else there. Like, there's a fear of something, or there's, confusion. Your brain might get in confusion only because we haven't addressed the confusion. Might we not do something? Right. Just like you
Mhm.
were saying, it's like if you stop your brain and you don't believe everything it says, and he says, I don't feel like it. I don't want to. And ask why, what's happening. Right. Really, I phrase it as having a conversation with yourself. Right. So sometimes we'll be in a session and I'm going to ask you a question like, oh, so how do you want to address this when it happens? What's the conversation you want to have with yourself? Like I really think about our brain as two separate people. One of them wants what it wants when it wants it, and then
Mhm.
another wants what's best for us and our long-term higher self, however you want to phrase it. And then we've got to do the work of allowing those two people inside of us to have a conversation and come to a place where they're going to take action for the best interest of everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I like when you always say like just keep asking yourself why, right? And it's like drilling down and you feel like a child asking, but why, but why, but why? And it's funny how you drill down to something if you keep asking that question and suddenly, then you're like, okay, now I see what the real problem is. Let me address it and let me move forward. Because like you said, you can allow your mind to stay somewhere, let's say between the first and second why, but when you keep drilling down, you then know what you really need to address.
Yeah. And it's kind of like you know it when you hear it. You're like,
Right.
oh, that's the truth. That's what's
Yeah.
really happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I love that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious, like when you came to coaching, what was it that you wanted to accomplish for yourself?
It's funny how I have to kind of think about going back because now I think I've probably gotten something else out of it. But I think I was coming with hopes of getting some clarity on kind of what I'm doing, where I want to go with my life, career, whatever it may be. But um, just, and again, addressing, giving myself the tools to be able to keep working at what it is I want. But certainly, I think the mindset piece is the best that's come out of it, and that was certainly part of why I signed up. But I think that's been the biggest takeaway, if you will.
You said there was something, you got something else out of it. Can you tell us what that is?
Well, again, I think when I signed up, and perhaps it was part of my trying to justify, right, the investment at that time. It's like, I need this clarity, I need to figure things out. But what I got more out of, and while it was on the list, but I think it took up more of the takeaway is the mindset piece, just the tools to really address mindset and give myself the ability to put myself in the right mindset to do anything, right? So even if it's figure something out or achieve a goal, set a goal, that's really what's been the biggest takeaway.
Okay. So we've been working together for about 5 months. Did
Mhm.
you get what you came for?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's, that's always something that, when I'm thinking about it, when I'm choosing to invest in something, I ask myself, how am I going
Mhm.
to get what I came for?
Right.
Instead of like just relying on the person to give me something. And that
Hmm.
puts me in the mindset of I'm I am going to show up for myself in a way that gets the results. When you came to coaching, what were your thoughts about, and maybe it was like while we were working together, what have your thoughts been that have helped you get what you came for?
One is being honest when you show up. One of the first things you ask is, what did you come with today, or what's going on in your life? And I think as we've continued and progressed in the coaching relationship, it's been easier for me to identify things that would be good to talk about. Whereas in the beginning, I think we probably have a tendency of like, oh, I don't know, that might be not appropriate, or that's not what coaching is for. But sometimes, again, the best sessions come when you're just talking about something that seems mundane, or something that you feel you should be able to figure out. Or like, something like calendaring. I know we've talked a lot about time management and calendaring. So I think that's kind of the thought process that kind of works through there.
Yeah, it's really easy. I do this too, is I will judge myself before I go into a
Right.
coaching session. And I'll be like, I should have
Yeah.
something better than this,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so when you come or another client comes and they're just like, honestly, I don't have anything. That's like not a problem because then I could just be like, okay, that's great. And let's
Hmm.
play. And
Yeah.
then we can talk and it's just amazing where the sessions can go and like the realizations that can happen even when you don't bring something to a session.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with that 100%, because certainly in the beginning, I felt like almost a pressure to like, come up with this like life-changing topic. But really, like I said, some of the best sessions have been when I just tell you, hey, this week just here are the issues I'm having, and we just kind of drill down on that and work on it. So yeah, I would definitely tell folks, don't stress about having the right topics or whether you have the right things to talk about. Just kind of show up for yourself, and you'd be surprised what you get.
Yeah. Um, you've talked about quite a few tools that have helped you. Is there anything that you haven't mentioned that you've learned in coaching or that has come to you, like been a tool that's been really handy for you that you have used and seen improvements in your life?
I don't know if it's precisely a tool, but one of the things that certainly has been another takeaway is I think so often we're looking at other people and things other folks are doing. You think like, oh, I can't do that in my life right now where I'm at. But sometimes talking through it and working through some of these sessions, you realize that you can create what it is you're desiring right where you are right now, no matter the circumstances. So, attorneys may often say, oh, I can't do that. I'm an attorney. I'm at a law firm, right? But if you think about it and drill down to what it is you're really wanting or desiring, you'd be surprised how you open up doors to create some of what you feel is missing right where you are right now.
Oh my gosh, I love that because that's something that I think everybody to some extent has the thought that I'm kind of stuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I can't get out of wherever I am right now. When I was prosecuting, I thought that there's just I can't do anything else. Like I wanted to do something else, but I kept shutting down the possibility with all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of reasons, right? Quote unquote reasons.
Right.
All the stories I had. I don't have time. I don't know how. What are other people going to think? They're going to think that I'm not serious about my career. They're not going to take me seriously as an attorney or, promote me or whatever it is. And I could have let that totally block me from trying new things because my
Mm-hmm.
brain kept shutting down. Like my very first coach, my brain could not get past the idea of leaving the office,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Right.
And even before that, like doing something on top of being a lawyer seemed hard. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just had to kind of feel my way in the dark and try to like how do I make more time? And before I
Right.
found coaching and then I discovered how I could do it. And then
Hmm.
later on, I discovered I was using a lot of the tools, a lot of the mindset work on myself in that very small part of my life to make more time. I didn't know it actually could help me create whatever I wanted from right where I was. I didn't realize that I could plan something huge for my life and then
Hmm.
learn how to take the steps, like the small steps right now to get where I
Right.
want to go.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we're just looking for this big, ginormous change, right? That this has to like completely transform. But sometimes we can have a transformation right where we're at, like I think make an analogy to lawyers, right? If you feel, oh, I'm in a profession that's not creative, right? But maybe you learn a new practice area or you pick up a new specialty, and suddenly you see like different creative ways of bringing that creativity right into your practice right now without having to completely, you know, upend your career or change careers or do something completely different. So that's been helpful. If there's something I feel I want or that I feel would make me feel more whole, perhaps, then is stopping and thinking like, okay, how do I bring this into my life right now without, changing too much?
Yeah, I think that's really important to notice where we shut ourselves down, where we like have a
Hmm.
desire and then we just immediately say no, because
Right.
those desires are there for a reason. Like, I firmly believe that when we have a calling to do more, to expand, that is, it's like instruction. We're getting instruction from our subconscious, our higher self, however you want to phrase it. We're getting instruction on which direction to go, what
Right.
is going to help us grow the most and feel amazing.
Hmm.
And when we shut it down right away, we don't give it any air to breathe, then we shut down that higher self. And this also comes, I was thinking this morning about how often people come to me saying, like, I just don't trust myself, right? I don't trust that voice. And when they don't trust themselves, when they haven't built that relationship with themselves, it makes it really difficult to give that voice air. We don't want to listen to it. We think it's wrong.
Yeah, and another part of that too is, feeling that higher voice has to be like completely perfect right out the gate, right? But if we shut it down immediately, we may never get to what we feel is, quote unquote perfect. I think a lot of times we feel that there has to be some, higher power that like breaks these seas and suddenly there's this awakening that you have. But really, it's just listening to that voice little by little, right? If it's something small you want and pursuing that and playing with that, you'd be surprised, I think, what opens up from there. So that's part of also what I've been working on is just, listening to that little voice and, like, okay, let's see where this goes. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't mean it has to be something I do for the rest of my life or that changes anything major. It's just kind of exploring and see where it takes you.
Yeah. How has the work that we've been doing changed the relationship you've had with yourself?
It's made it kinder. It's just not, beating myself up right away when I, identify, maybe there was a goal I wanted to hit, or maybe there was something that I wanted to do and didn't. It's just being kinder to myself and recognizing like, okay, well, maybe this wasn't the right timing, or maybe this wasn't really what I had in mind, and addressing it. And if it's something that I really do want after going through that process, is identifying how I can get there for myself and what works for me and what feels right for me.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about like that kinder relationship with you have with yourself, does that correlate? Like, do you have more self-trust with yourself now to follow that voice?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't second doubt myself as much. And again, breaking things down, it's kind of like you think of like, okay, well, like what's the worst that can happen here, right? And it's going through that exercise of just trusting yourself. And you know what? If you don't get it right, that's okay too, because now we have the tools to address it and we can backtrack. Or what's the worst case that happens if I make, again, using kind of lawyer analogies, the wrong legal argument? Well, I'll just make another one and we move on. But sometimes, I know I did, and still do at times without doing the work, is you get stuck on this. I have to get everything right 100% of the time. And that's not the case.
Yeah, I think that's also the case when you're in this world of thought work, in this world of mindset work. we can even bring that perfectionistic mindset to the coaching, and that can block us from making the changes that we want only because we're judging ourselves. So,
Hmm.
like, part of the work that we do, like, whether it's with you or anybody, whether it's with myself, is like constantly accepting and loving that voice that tells
Right.
us we should be doing it better, different, whatever, and saying and having that conversation with it, saying, like, hey, I understand that you think that things should be different, that you should be better at this, that you should have it all together.
Mhm.
And saying, look, it's okay if you don't. Look at where we are. I mean, look at you. You're very successful. I'm very successful. If you're listening to this, you're probably very successful too.
Right.
You've been doing okay. You know?
Right.
So it's
Right.
this work that we do is a choice. Like,
Mhm.
nobody needs coaching,
Right.
to be successful. It's a choice. You get to decide.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would add to that, like, like you said, you're if you're listening, you're successful, right? If you're an attorney, you're successful. But we so often like forget all of the successes we had to get to where we're at. And I think coaching helps us also remind ourselves of that. And that inevitably gives you a confidence to go forth and listen to that voice and say it's okay. But I think after practicing for some time, we forget all of the hurdles we've overcome to
Yeah.
get to where we are. I was talking to someone the other day and we were talking about the bar exam. It's like, remember when that was the biggest hurdle you'd ever had in your life and you were able to do that. So just reminding yourself of the possibilities when you kind of go for it and have confidence in yourself that you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, that self-confidence is so important. It's really
Mhm.
essential for us if we want anything bigger. Because I,
Right.
I think a lot of us come to this work and we want something for expansion. It could be money, it could be a lifestyle change, whatever it is. When we come to this work, what can stop us or put the brakes on, so to speak, is not having that self confidence. And what builds that self confidence is having that better relationship with ourselves, being kinder to ourselves, um, doing the little things that help us trust ourselves, like doing the things on the calendar and learning how to walk through exactly what you walk through. That builds confidence, reminding ourselves of our wins, right? All the
Mhm.
things we've already accomplished in our careers and our life, and reminding ourselves we still have that. Like, no matter what
Mhm.
happens, we still can go back to doing whatever it was we were doing. We were still successful. Like, nothing has gone wrong. And all those little things build the confidence for us to take steps towards that bigger picture that we have for our life. And that's, I love it because I know that I feel so great in my skin, like
Right.
compared to like when I look back at myself, even a couple years ago, right? Like, I can look
Mhm.
back at myself and be like, whoa, what a difference. And know that still at that point, I was still successful.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And no one decision or action is going to erase all of the successes you've had, right? So I think I know you've talked on previous podcasts, and I love your analogy. Like right away, you think, if I get this wrong, I'm going to be homeless on the street eating a can of beans, right? And I think my mind is quick to go there too, right? Every mistake I make is going to end up with my family being homeless on the street. But, it's to remind yourself that, taking these steps or making a mistake, it does not mean that every success gets washed away. That you still carry those with you and they're still part of your repertoire and armor.
Yeah. I love that. What have you learned about yourself through your coaching experience?
That I'm capable, that, really it's the reminder again to that I can do what I put my mind to, right? It's just having the right mind to do it. That I can trust myself, that I can make decisions for me, that, advance my professional life, my personal life the way I want and to reach, what it is, the life that I'm seeking to create.
Mm, I love that.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm just going to check here because I think I want to respect your time. And I
Oh, yeah.
think we're almost finished here. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, this is a really good one that I
Mhm.
hear from lawyers. And I thought this for a really long time. And I put
Mhm.
off doing a lot of things and asking for help. Even in my legal career, not even, as I was growing my business, but in my legal career, in college, I saw this. It was a pattern, is I always thought I should be able to figure things out for myself, that
Mhm.
I just wasn't working hard enough and I needed to just work harder, and that the answer was out there, and it was probably something that was really simple, and like I just needed to find it on my own. It's kind of like the thought, there's like this running gag. It's something like this man is out on a deserted island, and there's a helicopter that comes over, and he says, no, I'm waiting, I'm waiting for God to
Yeah.
help me. And
Mhm.
then he like, a guy with a boat comes by, and all they said, no, I don't need your help, I'm fine, I'm waiting
Right.
for God. And then he dies, and God says, what the heck, like, I sent you a boat, I sent you a
Yeah.
helicopter, what happened?
Right.
So
Right.
like, what would have you ever experienced that?
Oh, all the time. I think it's because we come up with this thought, like you said, I just have to work harder, right? It's obviously I'm not doing something right. I'm not putting in the effort. Or again, we get into the comparison um, issues of like, I see this person, it seems like they're working, 15 hours a day. So if I can just mimic that, then everything else is going to fall in place. But that's not the case. We're lawyers, we may have billable hour requirements, but there's other things that it doesn't always have to be as hard, right? You kind of have to do the smarter, not harder sometimes. And figuring what that means for you, figuring that out is really helpful. And sometimes, like you said, it's a lot easier than we want to make it seem, right? We think that we have to do all these really hard things that just push us beyond our comfort zone. And while that's good to get outside of your comfort zone, sometimes it's the things that we do best and are easy for us that could really produce results.
Tell me, what are some of the things that have helped you make your life easier, like in your law practice?
hmm well, we talked a lot about the calendaring and time blocking, so that's been easier to help me reach some goals that I've set for myself. The other thing is going to what we just said about looking at what's easy for us versus producing results. And so I know we've walked through an exercise, and I kind of implement that, right? It's like, is this hard, but does it produce results? If it's hard and not immediate results, well, then maybe I don't want to prioritize that. But if it's easy and gets me results and I have evidence that it gets me results, then I want to make sure to prioritize that, right? Because one, it's easy, two, it's producing results, and I'm achieving what it is I want to do. It's not to say that we never have to do hard things, but at least it gives me building blocks to get to where I want to be.
Yeah. And I always like to ask myself, how can I make this easier? Because I think
Yeah.
our brain throws up subconscious roadblocks sometimes, saying, oh no, this is going to be so hard. You're not going to want to do this. And if I
Right.
ask myself, how do I make this easier? My brain starts searching for some solutions. And
Mhm.
so then it's like, oh, well, maybe I cross off doing that thing so that I can really focus on what's most important here, that's going to move the needle on my practice or my business. Like
Right.
that's really what so many of us, I think, neglect to do, is like we just kind of believe everything our brain says about what we should be doing right now and how we should be, managing our time, and
Yeah.
being busy is somehow better because you're going to get more done. But when we do it that way, when we're listening to our brain and not questioning it, we waste more time and we waste more energy, and we just don't feel as good in our day. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of like, again, going back to law school, like when you outline, it's taking the time to just pinpoint things and kind of organize it. For me, that's my simplification list, right? I take the hard thing in my mind and try to just break it down. Like, what can help me achieve this, these simple steps? And it's taking that time and I physically write it down. I'm the one who has to write it down. But just taking that time to do that and simplify it really helps me see where can I take action right now to move me toward accomplishing that hard thing or getting it figured out.
oh yeah, I love that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so we're wrapping up here. And
Mhm.
one question that I have for you is, if there's somebody who is considering coaching, like who wants to
Mhm.
work with me, but is kind of like hesitant, right? It's like they keep going to the strategy page session page and they want to book a call, but they've been putting it off. What would you say to them?
I would say don't allow the analysis paralysis to get you. Just sign up for the consultation call. It'll really give you an insight into what coaching is, and just go for it. If you've been listening to the podcast, then it's probably because there's something there you've identified you need. So I would say go for it. You won't regret it, and it's certainly customizable to meet you where you are. You don't have to be at any specific time, place, or point in your career. This really can help anyone right where they're at.
Mm. And then if you were to share any words of wisdom with our listeners, what would they be?
Hmm. Trust yourself and trust that you can do hard things and trust that you can find a way to get what you want and where you want to be.
I love that. And if
Mhm.
they want to connect with you and maybe say hi to you, send you a DM, where
Yeah.
can they find you?
Sure. Well, you can easily find me on LinkedIn. I love to be on LinkedIn. So just by my name, Kimberly Lopez, and I have my married name on there, Narbona. And also on Instagram, I recently created an account called Latinas in Big Law. So this is just part of me trying to share my journey and build community amongst Latinas in Big Law because there's not many of us. And so just building that community and helping others see the path and career opportunities available. It's just kind of a passion project that I've started there. So either way, happy to connect with anyone on either platform.
And I'll be sure to link to those in the show notes. So anybody who's interested, we will have all of that information for you there. Thank you so
Awesome.
much
Thank you.
for joining me, Kimberly. This has been really fun.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely an honor to be here and certainly grateful to have found you and to have worked with you these past 5 months and continue on.
Thank you, Kimberly, for taking the time to talk with me. If you want to connect with her, you can find the links that she mentioned in the show notes at dinacataldo.com/242. And if you have been wanting to work with me and this episode resonated with you, this is your sign for you to sign up for a strategy session with me. To do that, you can go to the show notes or you can go to dinacataldo.com/strategy session. dinacataldo.com/strategy session. And that will give us time to talk about what coaching can do for you. Thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you next week. See you then.